Once I knew it was a problem, was around 2016. I almost overdosed. I would lock myself in my room. I was no longer drinking or partying. I was just in my room, just doing blow multiple nights.
Hi everyone, welcome to Secrets Revealed. My name is Dr. Ali, and we're here to meet 6 ex-addicts to discuss their stories and a secret they've kept hidden. Each person will remain anonymous using a mask and an alias to protect their identity. At the end of their turn, they'll choose whether or not to reveal who they really are. My kids don't know I brought drugs on our family vacation. If this is your secret, please raise your hand. Casey, please share your story with us.
It was April of 2015, and I had been sober for about 9 months before that, but I had started using again. It sounds sort of benign, brought drugs on family vacation. It could have been like, pills or weed or something. And maybe we were just like driving to Palm Springs or something, but actually we were going on an international flight to Tahiti. And because I had started using again, and of course nobody knew, and I was actually using meth. I have 3 children, and you really can't take drugs on an airplane. So I had a dealer who suggested how I might be able to take them there. And I was so afraid of getting there and having to come down and not having my speed with me, not having my drug, that I took his advice, wrapped it in 3 condoms, and secreted it bodily on myself. It was extremely uncomfortable, very dangerous. I could have died. I could have gotten caught. I actually had to go through security twice. Had to avoid going through the circular one because they would have seen it. It's kind of a funny story because I'm like going to Tahiti, right? Like with my family, going to this beautiful place to go scuba diving and snorkeling, and all I could think about was having drugs because I was addicted. A couple months after that, I did go into treatment, and I've been sober for about 9.5 years. But like, how do you get to that point? I've worked very hard, and part of what helps is by speaking honestly, right? And by working through speaking feelings, having community, amending my behavior, and I have a wonderful life now, and I have a great relationship with my kids, and they know a lot of other things that I did. And of course, when I was on the vacation, I didn't have enough to last through, and I ended up having not a good time, not being a present parent, of course, not being available to my family. I missed out on the things that I had so wanted to do. And that was my life. I wasn't a drug addict and alcoholic the whole time I was parenting my children. It came later in life. But when it hit me hard, and I went down very fast.
When I hear people go through such scary situations that might put themselves at risk, like when you were bringing drugs along on the flight, when I hear that, there's some kind of need that drug is satisfying. I'm wondering if you know what it was that you needed at that time. What were the drugs doing for you?
I was really, really unhappy. Had a lot of anxiety. Had a real inability to communicate, to talk about what was going on with me. I think it helped me keep up appearances in some ways. I'm not sure that was true, but it felt like it. Mm-hmm. And to be perfectly honest, I'm from LA. It kept me skinny. It kept me thin. It kept me looking like everything was okay. Mm-hmm. And as long as things looked okay on the outside, which it didn't last for long, at some point I started to look like I was dying. Mm-hmm. But as long as things looked okay from the outside, then nobody asked if I was all right. I wasn't happy in my marriage, and I didn't know how to say that. Mm-hmm. And I sort of thought that if I got caught using, that I would get, that I would force his hand because I couldn't speak for myself. And that's something that I've learned how to do. I owe my life to being sober.
There are so many things that your addiction was serving and was doing for you. And now you're on the other side of this. what has helped you to work through those issues and also the shame you mentioned about having gone through this experience?
You know, I have a community. I'm in a program of recovery. I have outside help. You know, thank God for therapy. And the thing that helps me work through shame is, as a mother who was in active addiction and alcoholism while I was raising my children, you know, as a mother who drove drunk and high while my kids were in my car, speaking about it to other women who have gone through the same thing and who are probably riddled with shame like I was, to let them know that you can let go of that and have your family repaired. That's what's helped me. Because I heard a woman share early on for me that she was arrested on a DUI and put in the backseat of a police car with her five-year-old. And she was just a picture of grace. And I thought, if that woman can do it, so can I. And so I started sharing my story too. And speaking about our hard truths helps diminish them.
You were trying to keep up appearances before, and what's helped you is to share part of your shame, and it's taken that power of shame away.
Yes.
I want to invite you right now, if you feel comfortable, to remove your mask. Would you feel comfortable sharing your name?
Yeah, I'm Abra.
Abra.
Yeah.
Good to meet you.
Thank you. Good to meet you too.
What is it that helped you to decide to remove your mask?
I try to be as honest as possible, and I don't have too many secrets left from my family. Certain things are private, but I don't need to keep this secret.
What are you grateful for now that in the past you might have struggled with?
Well, I'm grateful I went through my addiction.
You're grateful you went through your addiction?
Yeah, I'm grateful I had it. It's led me to the life I have now. I think I always struggled with some form of addiction and compulsion, but it was never bad enough to really fully address. But a meth addiction really smacks you in the face. You know, you can't really hide from it. Even just being an alcoholic, like your mom, you drink too much wine or something, but when your mom is like hiding her drugs under the seat of the car and, you know, waking up in the morning and smoking meth in the bathroom. Like, I have a friend who says that like meth is the fast lane to recovery, right? You can't hide from that kind of drug addiction, not in the position that I was in. There was not a choice for me. At the time that it came to a head, there was not a choice. I did not want to lose my family. Did not want to lose the relationship that I had with my children. I did not want to lose that love.
If you could go back and tell your daughter what you were struggling with on that trip, what do you wish she had known about her mom?
I think I think they knew that I was unhappy, that I was sort of beat down, that I was just struggling to keep it together. And, you know, honestly, it's too much for a child to have to handle, and she handled a lot. She really has handled a lot, and she's an amazing person. And I mean, I have three. You know, I always talk about her. She was the youngest. She was around the most. But I have three. My son's getting married at the end of the month. You know, my daughter is my two daughters. Like, I am so grateful I didn't miss that. So grateful I didn't miss out on seeing my kids become these amazing grown-up humans.
And I'm so grateful you're able to share that with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So you talked about keeping up appearances, and I'm wondering, back then, what did you think a good mother looked like? What did you think a good wife looked like? What did you think a good woman looked like?
Being a good mother meant being very involved with her kids, taking them to activities, having friends. But really, I just wanted to be present for them. And, you know, being a good wife was really about looking the part. It's not how I feel now, even though appearance is important to me. But what's more important to me now is to be available, to have an open heart, and to be present for the people around me, to be able to give and receive love. But it's hard to think back to that time because the things that I did to try to be a good mom and wife were not what was really the most important.
I became addicted to coke while working for a drug cartel. If this is your secret, please raise your hand. When you're ready, go ahead and share your story.
Part of me, it's taken me a quick little second. I've never actually shared this with anyone but my wife. I had a very strong addiction to cocaine. It started back in '07 while I was living down in Mexico. I was actually a lookout for one of the most powerful drug cartels down in Mexico. And my boss at the time gave me a nice little ball. You know, I didn't know what it was and called it perico. He gave it to me to, you know, help me stay up. So naturally, you know, I was on the lookout, had to, you know, watch military movement and rival drug cartel movement for 12 hours in a secluded spot. So I would stay awake. My shift was from 8 p.m. to 8 in the morning, and then we would swap out with the next person. I liked it a lot. It kept me up. It gave me a nice little energy boost, and I got addicted to it. You know, from then it just really became a party drug. You know, having that lifestyle, you know, naturally involves, you know, women. So I partied a lot with women. It was very fun. I left Mexico, what was it, 2010, I believe. I, you know, came out to the States, and naturally that drug found me, you know. Well, I found it. You know, as a person with addiction, you always find your way. And like I said, I used it for a party drug throughout the years. Once I knew it was a problem was around 2016 when I almost overdosed. I would lock myself in my room. I was no longer drinking or partying. I was just in my room, just doing blow multiple nights. Get panicked, feel because of the lifestyle that I lived, someone was looking for me. It was tough. During that time, I did have a son. Well, I do have a son. But unfortunately, my partner at the time had to, you know, face the consequences of what cocaine, you know, turned me into a real violent person. You know, I did strike her in her face, you know, something I'm not proud of, you know, but coke just made everything easy for me. I was homeless, lost my job. It was, honestly, I hit rock bottom. It was strangers that actually helped me out. You know, I was able to, you know, land a really decent job. I met my now wife at the time, and honestly, it was because of her, the way she was, that, you know, just helped me push through that addiction, you know, and she was literally my guardian angel because of her, I turned my life around. You know, we got two kids, beautiful boy, beautiful girl, and I feel because of that addiction, I learned a lot of myself. I learned the person I don't want to be and the person that, you know, I am now.
This is your first time sharing the secret with anyone beyond your wife.
That's correct.
First time sharing with a group. What helped you to make that choice to share it with us today?
I know there's a lot of people out there, you know, struggling with not only you know, coke addiction, just addictions to drugs to themselves. You know, a lot of people may be in worse situations that, you know, I've been in, and I guess I'm just here to let them know that, you know, change is possible. You can be right at the bottom, but that's where you start to grow to be able to blossom. It just took me that, you know, to learn, and, you know, change is possible no matter, you know, what you're doing, where you've been. As long as you want to change, you can do it.
You mentioned that you find your way to the drug, and I'm really struck by how you weren't asking for that first hit. You weren't reaching for it. Someone gave it to you. Who do you hold responsible?
Well, at this age, you know, with the experience, you know, and everything I lived through, I hold myself responsible because ultimately I'm the one with the choice. But at the time I was young, you know, I was just, you know, being out there, you know, discovering life, and, you know, this person who was an adult, you know, was my boss, a police officer. He knows what that was going to do to me, because that's what they do to a lot of younger people. They're just easier to control when, you know, they can supply you with something, you know, you rely on them. So forever I always thought of that person, you know, responsible, but as an adult, you know, I'm responsible for my actions, and, you know, I hold myself responsible for that.
And now, given the perspective you have, the wisdom you've gained, the love you've found, if you could go back and tell that younger version of you a message that he needed to hear, what would you tell him?
That's a good question. I'll just let him know that, he's not alone. That there will be someone out there in the future that will love him very much, and, they will change for that person. But just go straight and narrow. It's not worth it. Obviously, I went through a lot at the time, and just thinking about that young man who went through all that hell, I would just point him to the right direction and just let him know this isn't worth it.
Carrie, I'm wondering if at this point you would like to remove your mask.
Based on where, my addiction started, and for, other stories, I would like to remain anonymous.
I really appreciate you sharing with us and helping us to learn a little bit more about you and your story. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm imagining you in 20 years feeling safe, feeling like you are living in a world full of light. What wisdom does that version of you have to share with the you today?
Well, that's actually a very tough question, because I feel that I'm already where I want to be. I feel like the old version of myself would think exactly what I am now, maybe just a tad little wiser, because I know life's beautiful. Based on everything I've been through, my addiction that, I overcame. I was addicted for 9 years. I didn't share that earlier, but, just being clean, being able to, see life at this perspective, it's beautiful. Getting, to go home in a house in the suburbs with my beautiful wife, my kids, it's just everything. I'm content where I am now.
My addiction to porn led to physical cheating. If this is your secret, please raise your hand. Jason, when you're ready, please share your story.
I was exposed to pornography around 11, 12, 13 years old in the mid-90s, when we really didn't know the dangers of what this thing was yet. I had a computer in my room by myself with unrestricted access to the internet. One night I stumbled across pornography, and I had no idea what it was. But what I did know was it felt really good, and it felt really bad and shameful at the same time. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even have the words to describe what I was seeing or what sex was or what it meant. So I did what I knew how to do best, which was to stuff it down, just deal with it, and I hid it for a long time. Throughout my teenage years, I used pornography relatively regularly. I always said I would stop when something happened, when I graduate high school, when I get a girlfriend, when I get married, when I have kids, whatever it is. But the when kept coming, and the behavior never stopped. I got married when I was 26 years old, and willed myself into stopping pornography while I was dating my now wife and during our engagement, and thought I was good, as though getting married would fix it. But it didn't. And about a year into our marriage, I had started using pornography again, and I physically cheated with multiple other women during the course of my marriage, which is something I never thought I would do. The pornography was something I thought I could manage and keep it under control, and then it just exploded into, well, this isn't working anymore, so let's see what else is out there. And growing up in a faith-based environment, not only was pornography viewed poorly, but adultery was as well. So I again did the thing that was natural to me, which was to not say anything about it. And I swore to take the secret to my grave. So I stopped the behavior, lasted for about a year or so, and lived with a tremendous amount of guilt and shame that was insurmountable. I could not deal with it. About 4 years later, after hiding the secret, I came forward to my wife, and I told her. By the way, she was 8 months pregnant with our second child. I really didn't want to do that. And I have to mention, just to honor and acknowledge my wife in this whole journey. We're still married, been married 14 years now. And just the incredible strength it took and has taken for her to be there still and for us to be able to restore our marriage. So I told her, and she was absolutely devastated. I live in Arizona, and the evening that I told her, it was a monsoon. In Arizona, we get these dark, gloomy, scary monsoons, thunder and lightning. And I just remember after revealing to her everything, she just went outside and sat in the literal and figurative storm. And I just watched her be in that, which was heartbreaking to witness. And so that began a process of healing and recovery and exploring what got me to that point. And so that was about 8 years ago, almost to the day that I made that confession. And through a lot of different modalities of healing, I've been able to confront my story, where it began, the trauma that I experienced growing up, entering into and staying in a forgiveness process continuously, forgiving myself, being in restoration, reconciliation with my wife. And it's been 8 years now, and there's been no porn, no desire ever to look at pornography again or have affairs. Because I know what it did to my soul. It hooked me when I was young because I was in pain, and left unchecked, it just got a hold of me, and it skewed the way I viewed people, the way I viewed sex, the way I viewed love. I thought porn was love, or sex was love, which it's not, but it is a byproduct of a loving relationship. And I was able to explore that and then find healing and have compassion towards myself for being in that behavior that I was in. And so the further I get from that, the more I'm grateful for the journey, because I found that not only the will to live, but it's worth it for me to live. There's something that I have to offer this world that I never thought was possible growing up.
You mentioned that you've been searching for answers. What answers have you found about the person you are today?
Well, I'm worth loving. The trauma that I was unaware of that I had to confront was the death of my mother when I was 5 years old. She was a pilot. She died she was flying the plane and she crashed. I don't have great memory of that day, but I've gone back and explored it with my dad before he passed and others who knew me at that point in life. And what I realized was the story of what happened to me was not just a boy who found porn. It was not a boy who had perverted desires, though all that's true. It was a boy who questioned whether or not he was loved, whether he had a mom who loved him. I wrestled with that my whole life. Pornography was a comfort for me. It made me feel loved by a woman, by an older woman, which I so desperately wanted and craved. And so wrestling through that question, I was sexually abused by an older woman in my teenage years as well, which reinforced the perverted view of love and sex and what a mom should be, or how a mom is supposed to love. And it's not that I wanted to watch porn and masturbate just to get off. I was trying to figure out, am I loved, am I lovable, am I worth being loved? And so I went to find the answer to that question in a lot of bad places. There's a saying that every man who knocks on the door of a brothel is actually searching for love. They don't want sex, they just want love. And when I kept trying and trying and trying things to figure out if I was loved or not, and continuously left empty and questioning my life, finally, it was, well, there's got to be a different story here. And engaging therapy, coaching, group modalities, faith-based modalities, and being given the opportunity with curiosity to explore that question, I have to say, yes, I'm worth being loved. And yes, my mom did love me. But what I've learned through the journey is my ability to give love is directly proportionate to my ability to let love in, which was foreign to me because I was so cut off from it, losing my mom. It was too painful to let people get close. So I'm going to keep them over here, even though I'm wanting to pull them close. But when I realized or was challenged just to be loved, to let myself be loved, to receive love, that changed everything and answered the question, yes, I am lovable, yes, I'm capable of love, and I have a lot of love to give.
Each and every one of us is wired for connection and for finding love for ourselves and for others and to be loved. And if we don't have enough of that, we'll find it in a drug, we'll find it in shopping, we'll find it in porn, we'll find it in some kind of addiction. What do you love about yourself now?
I got a big heart. Another way that this manifested throughout my life was I was an arrogant, contemptuous a-hole, to put it nicely. And I didn't like, and still don't like, that part of me. And I've grown to have compassion for that season, that story, because it's not because I was an a-hole, though I was, but it was just me operating out of my pain and my hurt. And so now I do love that I get to be a gentle, loving, bold, courageous person. And it's through my suffering that I was able to find that and experience what that could look like. And so I've really grown to love that through that pain and hurt, I have the capacity to come alongside other people and try, I'm not perfect at it, but to try to be with somebody in their hurt and their suffering, to show that there is hope for a different life, a different story. Because it's worth it. It's so much better not living under guilt and shame and addiction. And so even sometimes when I think to myself, is this too good to be true? How did this story happen? Like, well, it has to be. It has to be true because a life that's worth living, in my experience of my life, was so hard to get to, and now it's like I'm grateful for every day that I have.
Yeah, obviously I relate seeing that struggle and about how it skews love and intimacy, and at times it makes you depersonalize people, and you come in with the expectation of intimacy or something like that, and you don't get that, and then it could make you as a person just throw your hands up, walk away. I just have a computer, so why do I need to try? Why do I need to care about you as a person when I can just get what I want on demand at the press of a button? And that leads to a lot of danger. And overcoming that is, anyone who does that, it's commendable to take the more difficult path.
I'm wondering if at this time you feel comfortable removing your mask.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
And would you like to share your name?
Yeah, my name is Austin Hamilton.
Austin, it's good to see you. Mm-hmm. What was it in this moment that helped you to remove your mask?
The years of hiding, keeping a secret, in my experience, is just not worth it, the consequences of that. And I try to live my life now sharing my story to offer hope to other people, to maybe inspire somebody to be courageous enough to speak what's true for them or to speak their experience. And pornography, sex addiction, whatever you want to call it, lust, it's not talked about enough. Certainly not from, we'll say, the people who are teaching our kids, whether that's a parent-child relationship, schools, educators, politicians, media. There's way too much out there of what true love and sexuality is not supposed to be. And getting back to, okay, well, how can this look? But engaging that with kindness for the story. Like, it's so easy to judge somebody, especially somebody with some sort of sexual deviance or whatever. It's easy. But having kindness and care and compassion as we get the stories out there, as I learn to get my story out there. Again, it's not about a boy who found porn. It's about a deeply hurting boy. It's something that I can't not share it. The greatest lie I ever told myself was, up until a couple days before I told my wife, I would say, my mom died when I was 5, and it hasn't affected me. And that's the reaction I always got. It's like, oh, okay. But I was too scared to confront that lie. And so having the permission to do that allowed me to have that care and compassion, and I think that's needed.
It's impossible to be courageous without also being scared. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate the courage that you've brought to this moment and sharing this with us.
Doesn't mean I want to share or it's easy sharing, but I'm going to do it anyways because the outcome is always better.
If you could have one conversation with your mom now, what would you tell her?
I would tell her I love her. And I would ask her to hug me and never let go. It's so hard. It's just so hard. I'm grateful the way that my life has panned out, the gift that I get to be to other people and sharing my story and my suffering. And I don't know that I'd sign up for it again. I'm just grateful to be alive.
My family doesn't know I attempted to take my life. If this is your secret, please raise your hand. Seth, when you're ready, please share your story.
It's different when you hold it in your hand. Recently, I have done a lot of changes in my life, and one of those is freeing myself of guilt on a wide variety of topics and things in my past. And the one thing about guilt as it pertains to the people in your life, friends, family, coworkers, is that you can apologize, you can make amends, you can free yourself from the guilt of the things that you put them through or did to them. But the one person that you can't redeem your guilt for is yourself until you truly allow it to. And with taking my life being a secret that nobody knows, the only person that has to share in that guilt is me. I have a dual diagnosis of substance abuse, alcoholism, but it's also mixed with mental health disorder. Over the course of my lifetime, while suicidality and the thought of taking my life has been involved in my life for the better part of 15, 16 years, I have actually attempted to take my life 3 separate times. The one I kind of wanted to focus on because it was the pinnacle of me understanding just how bad everything had gotten was in the summer of 2016. And I had been for a while a high-functioning alcoholic. I had dropped out of school at this point, had a failed engagement, was really struggling to find myself, and was filling those voids with alcohol and sporadic drug use. One night, I drove back to my hometown. It was about 40 minutes from where I was currently living. And there is a bridge that covers a small river, but a train track actually goes across. Once you go out onto that bridge, there is no margin of error. It is just that train track. I had taken a bottle of tequila and had drank from the time that I left my house until the time that I got to that park and parked my car. And I walked out onto the bridge and I sat down and I waited. And that was the moment that I knew I was going to take my life. I continued to drink until I was numb to the thought of it. After about 45 minutes of sitting there waiting, nobody passed by, nobody saw me. I finally heard the train coming, and I stood up and I stood on the middle of the track. And as the train turned around the corner and headed my way, I took one last thought to myself as if this is it for me, if this is where it ends. And to this day, I can still visualize in front of my face how close I let that train get to me and the sounds and the environment around me before I ultimately jumped off of the bridge. The body of water that, was below me was ultimately very shallow, not really even deep enough to swim in. When I hit the water, I felt so much pain course through my body, and I ended up crawling myself, sopping wet like a dog, to the shoreline, pulled myself out, got in my car. I don't think I cried. I don't think I cursed. I don't think I thought anything. I got in my car. I drove home. I did my best to fall asleep and try to just pretend like it didn't happen. I still couldn't fall asleep. I was in pain. I had went to urgent care the following day and ultimately just had fractured ribs and deep bruising on my face. But that is what I escaped with. While I have 3 attempts in total, and all of which have allowed me to still be here in some way or another, that was the one that really just pushed the message to me that no matter how much I portrayed high-functioning, smart, works hard, always there, when friends or family needed it, always supportive, always the guy that you could turn to, at the end of the day, I was still going home and burying myself in a bottle every night. I was still going out to a bar every night. Ultimately, no matter how much I was doing to try to remain normal, that was just the time that I truly knew that I wasn't. While it took me a little bit of extra time to grasp that situation and get my life together, at least my version of together, I became sober in 2019. I was sober for 4.5 years. I did relapse, and then I have been sober again for a little over 1.5 years. So I can reflect and attempt to make amends to friends and family and everybody else involved in my life for the things that my actions caused to them. But this is one of 3 that people don't know that affects me and creates an unbearable guilt that I have to take accountability for and finally own it.
You were suffering with a lot of pain. What was hurting you?
I think there's been moments throughout my recovery and journey that it's changed. You know, initially I went through some childhood trauma, stuff that I really put on the back burner and didn't handle and didn't deal with and didn't try to process or come to terms with. And then the engagement that I had with that individual, we had a miscarriage. I had it all together on the outside. It was just falling apart internally, and I didn't know how to stop it. And I think as time has progressed, you know, I've had a second loss of a child and loss of jobs and careers that I thought I would, you know, do for a long period of time, to starting completely new and moving to new states. And, you know, it's just been a consistent, when one thing feels like it eases, another comes. And I think just for a good while of my life, I didn't know how to handle that.
I believe people become suicidal when they no longer have the ability to deal with the problem that is in front of them. And it's usually the enormity of the problem that overwhelms them. If you, knowing now, could share what can help you with that past version of yourself, what would you tell that person?
I think if I had the opportunity to speak to my former self, is, you know, something that even working, you know, in a mental health capacity that I do now, is one of my favorite things to tell people who are in recovery, and is that's recovery is not linear. It is going to look so different for everybody. And while I may have 3 attempts, the next person may have 0, the person after them may have 10 that they failed. That doesn't mean that any one of us suffered any less pain, heartache, heartbreak, struggles, animosity, guilt, shame. Those are feelings that I still deal with daily, that I'm processing, working through, discovering. If I had a chance to, you know, speak to a younger version of myself, ultimately I don't even know what I would say anything. I would like to take a picture of like myself and my son and just flash that picture. And it does get better, and it can get better. And yes, you may have had loss, but look at what you've gained.
It sounds like you found your reason for living. Seth, I'd like to extend an opportunity to you to take off your mask if you would like to at this point.
Yeah, so not gonna change my mind now.
What's up, guys?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Would you like to share your name?
Yeah, so unfortunately, as much as I look like a Seth, guys, name's actually Mason.
Mason, nice to meet you. What helped you to take off your mask right now?
Accountability. Like I said, I have a 5-year-old back home, and as much as even now, I still feel like on a day-to-day basis, I'm not doing enough or am not enough as a parent to him. He takes every opportunity without prompt to tell me how much he loves me and how proud of me he is, and like I'm a superhero to him. To go home at the end of this to him, knowing that even if he never sees this video or never comprehends this video, especially how old he is now, it's me reflecting to him, it is okay to make mistakes. It is okay to feel hurt, to shame, to feel burdened by life sometimes. But the second that you keep that to yourself, you put yourself at risk. And I don't know the impact that I would have made to friends or family if my life would have been taken. But I know the impact if something ever happens to him. And I have to take it from that perspective and look out for him. And so this is my opportunity to let him know that it's okay.
I think we're all learning. We're all learning how to be better parents. We're all learning how to take care of ourselves. And as long as we're doing that, I don't think we're failing. We're growing.
Always trying.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You mentioned in your story that you have a dual diagnosis.
Correct.
And for people who go through that, your mental health can sometimes drive you to use a substance, and then your substance use can make your mental health struggles worse. What is helping you now to deal with both, your mental health as well as substance?
I think the biggest thing that is helping drive me with the dual diagnosis of substance use and the mental health disorder is primarily my kid. He has become the focal point of everything that I do, through the good and the bad and the lessons that I have to learn and the experiences that I'm still progressing through that I'm not potentially handling correctly or having issues with, or still having that trauma fuel the unhealthy response. At the end of the day, I know I have a little boy who looks up to me, and he is the driving factor. I spent a long time working in warehouses and food industry. It wasn't until within the last 2.5, 3 years that I switched over to working in mental health. Started working with adolescents. I now work with adults in crisis who are coming to our services with a variety of mental health disorders and substance use disorders and addictions, and it may fall into that gambling or porn or alcoholism or whatever the case may be. And to be able to take everything that I have experienced and went through and fuel it into potentially changing somebody else's outlook. If I can just remotely be an influence on somebody else's future to be here, it's worth it to me.
I slept with as many as 4 people a day, including coworkers, while at work. If this is your secret, please raise your hand. Michaela, when you're ready, please share your story with us.
So, when I was really young, I was abused by a family member. That family member I grew up with, and nobody in the family really knew about it except for me and that member and their sibling. They introduced me into adult content. They showed me a video. I was hooked on it. I was doing a lot of things that children shouldn't know, all by the age of 5 and 8. By the time I was about 12, I lost my virginity. I was sleeping around. By the time I was 15, I realized I had an addiction. I was watching My Strange Addiction, and I saw that people can get addicted to anything. Before that, I just kept telling myself that it's not an addiction because only drugs and alcohol, that's all you hear in media, cigarettes, stuff like that. So I didn't know that a person can be addicted to porn or sex or anything like that. Eventually, I started hearing about it a little bit in the media, off and on. It didn't help that my mom would question why I was the way that I was, and she put me down. She told me how terrible I was. I was on birth control, so it didn't really make anything easier. It just kept me from getting pregnant. Eventually, I was able to stop. I managed to get myself to stop. I guess it's because I got disgusted, and I stopped for a very long time. And I think that's what kept me straight for a few years until I lost a friend. After I lost that friend, I went back. That was really hard. So after that, things got really difficult with my mom too. So I'd start sleeping with coworkers. I'd start sleeping with random people. I'd even get off of work and then they would order me an Uber and I'd go to their house. And I just kept sleeping around those people until eventually I ended up getting a therapist, and I started talking to my therapist and I started reaching out. Then I started healing myself again. And it subsided for a very long time. I ended up with a boyfriend who I'm with now, and things are good right now, but also not the best. I still have a porn addiction. I still watch it a lot, more than I'm proud of. I do still find myself struggling with it, but I think I'm getting better. I'm at least understanding it, and I'm stopping.
It seems like for you, sex was a way to feel good, and it gave you pleasure before it gave you that feeling of disgust after. What is giving you pleasure now in your life?
I got away from my mom, and I now live with my boyfriend. I'm rebuilding a lot of my relationships that were destroyed over that period of time. Some people I let go. Some people I still keep. And I'm learning about how to set healthy boundaries for everybody else, and including myself. I'm learning to hold myself accountable now. A lot of the times I just kind of blamed the addiction all my life. So I'm learning how to understand that. I'm getting really close with I'm finding my support system and leaning on them more. I just wanted to say I think it's incredibly brave to tell your story. It's not often women talk about porn and sex addiction and things like that. I know that particularly in my addiction, I watched a lot of porn, and it's not something that I like to talk about or am proud of. So I really, really appreciate your bravery. Thank you.
I'd like to give you an opportunity at this point to remove your mask if you'd like to. Would you like to share your name?
My name isn't really Michaela, it's Brianna.
Brianna, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
What helped you to take off your mask today?
Eventually, I do want to get into advocacy, especially for CSA and sex addiction. I think those two things are not really talked about. A lot of people don't talk about family members that hurt their children or that hurts children, nor do people talk about sex addiction, especially with women. A lot of people tend to ignore it. There's a lot of stigma around it, and I want people to understand that. Something that I heard a lot when pertaining to sex addiction is that it kind of skews your perspective on people. I'm sure for a lot of people that's true, but for me, it didn't skew my perception of people. If anything, it skewed my perception of sex itself. An issue that I tend to have with a lot is I don't have a connection like everyone else when they have sex. I don't feel their connection. I just feel body heat. When it comes to relationships, I feel like I have to build those first in order to have something meaningful.
I was addicted to porn while preaching purity. If this is your secret, please raise your hand. Patrick, when you're ready, if you could share your story with us.
Well, it was around December of 2005 that I was first exposed to pornography. See, in my house, we had HBO, and we also had the little squiggly channel. Depending on the time of the night, you'd find out what's on, and, 12-year-old kid, oh, what's that? That's exciting. That's interesting. And you don't really know what you're looking at or what's really happening. Your body's changing, but it's nothing that a child should be looking at. I was raised in a religious family, and I was very astute. I knew all my books of the Bible before I knew my alphabet. 4 or 5 years old, reciting all of them. But by 2006, people had noticed that I had a talent for talking about what's going on in the Bible, and they actually had me preach. I was a child minister. I traveled this country actually preaching. It was strange. People wanted to watch this 12-year-old kid tell them about Christ. And was I really deep in the throes of it at that time? Well, it was still something that I did. You go home at night, the doors are closed, nobody sees anything going on. You go to, channel 84, depending on the time of night, and stuff that kids shouldn't see. And you don't know how harmful it is at the time, but over time, it becomes more apparent, and you know what you're doing, especially if you're reading a book that's telling you not to do it. The Bible also says not many of you should, seek to be teachers because teachers will be judged more strictly. And I would go out, I would travel. They would pay me, 12, 13-year-old kid, and I'd give these amazing sermons and have to look at myself and know what I was doing and know that I couldn't stop doing it. And I actually, it made me not like me. Because whether or not someone believes it or not, if this is what I'm telling people to do, and I know that I personally am not doing it myself, what does that say about me? It would eat me alive from 2005, 2006, all the way up to 2011 when I stepped away from the faith entirely. I felt like a big pile of wasted potential. Let's just fast forward to 2017. The addiction was there, and I wanted to figure out how to get away from it. And nothing worked. I would see the way of escape. You can stand up, you can go for a run, you can call a friend. You don't have to do this. And you as you're doing it, you're not spending your time the right way, and this isn't good for you. That's not real love, that's not real relationships. That's not what real people look like and how they act. So I had to figure out how to stop. And my methods to try to figure out how to stop led to even worse things. So I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to watch this sort of content. I'm only going to watch this sort of content. But somehow the things in your algorithms get more strange and, I'm ashamed to say, even more violent. And when you find those things being pushed in front of you, maybe you don't notice what you're clicking on. It's still ultimately your fault, your responsibility. But when you stop and think, wait, did I just watch that? Or did I just think I was entertained by that? It makes you think terrible things about yourself, what kind of person you are.
What was a moment where your perspective changed?
I knew I needed to make a change. I had tried many times for over a decade, and I did take purity seriously. 28, 29 years old, still a virgin, and I was incessantly bullied for that. I met a wonderful woman who's my wife now, but while we were still dating and still, trying to stick to what the Bible said, trying to stay pure, July 4th, 2022, we spent time together and nothing happened. And that's a good thing. Nothing happened. I began finding a community and making a serious plan as to how to stop this for good. And I can proudly say I've been clean since July 2022, and the reason why is because I needed a big enough why, and it was bigger than me. I met a wonderful woman who deserved the best from me, and me engaging in something like that was not going to be the best for her, and not the best for the children that we're going to have. And I have one son now, and I want to raise my son to be the best, strongest, most upstanding man that he can be. I want him to be better than me. And how am I going to teach him when I'm not acting how I'm supposed to? Do I want my son doing everything wrong that I did? As you get older, you become the person who would have helped your younger self. And in a way or two, my son is my younger self. And so I want to help and I want to guide him that he doesn't turn out like I did in some ways.
There's two words that kept coming up in your story: purity and disgust. And I'm wondering if you could define what those mean to you.
Well, the disgust, it's just, if you've set it, if you have set the standard and you chose it and you choose not to do it every day and you know you're wrong for it, how should you feel about yourself? Especially if the standard is not imposed upon you, especially if you've agreed to it, especially if you think it's serious enough to go tell other people about it. If that's something that you have decided to do under your own volition, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the people you're teaching to live by it. You practice what you preach, and I wasn't doing that. And I had to go home every day and look at me. And I think it's very important to like the person looking back at you in the mirror. And that's what I had to work and strive towards every single day. Because I could lie to everyone in those crowds, but I can't lie to the God I believe in, and I can't lie to me. And I had to deal with those two every single day.
Patrick, I'm wondering if you would like to take off your mask at this point.
I don't know if I want to, but we'll do it.
We'll do it because, yeah.
Would you like to share your name?
My name is Marcus.
Marcus, it's good to see you.
Pleasure to meet you as well.
What led to your decision to remove the mask?
The book I read says the truth will make you free. And I think there's a lot of people behind a mask right now who don't tell people that they're struggling with this and want to stop. There are some people who just like watching it, okay, but there are people who don't like that they continue to do this, and I want them to know that they're not alone in this and that they can get out of this, they can find the big enough why, and if they face the truth, that truth will make them free.
I think you're right. This is an incredibly common struggle, and I really appreciate you bringing truth to your struggle. I think it's going to help start the conversation for a lot of other people. If you're a minister now, and a member of your congregation, a 12-year-old boy, came up to you and said they were struggling with porn, what would you tell them?
As a minister now, if a child came up to me telling me that they struggle with porn, first off, I would thank them for telling me, and I would congratulate them for their bravery. And I would let them know that a struggle like this, a demon like this, is just something that cannot be fought alone. So I would let them know that they've actually made the right choice by telling me. And then we can go into the steps to ensure this thing can't get further control of them. But they've already done the right thing. I would congratulate them first and foremost.
At this point, I want to give anyone who hasn't taken off their mask one last opportunity to do so if you would like to.
I appreciate everybody, sharing your stories, very inspiring, and I know you guys must be very proud of yourselves with how far you've come. But unfortunately, for a matter of my own safety, I cannot remove my mask.
And so much of what we do when we have experienced traumatic events is try to find safety again, trying to rebuild a sense of safety. So I completely understand your decision.
Thank you.
I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to be here, finding the courage to share your story, and leaving us with so much to think about how we can help each other and how we can move forward. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So many people are carrying a pain inside and suffering alone. And of course, substances, porn, anything really can offer us a quick way to end that suffering. But it doesn't solve the suffering. So much of our world has moved towards instant fixes, but there are no instant fixes for the pain of being a human. The only way through is to share that pain with others. And together, we can find solutions to these problems. Thanks for being here with us, and I'll see you on the next one. I really feel like I'm underdressed for some kind of interesting party.